All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Move for Health. Today we have another special guest, my good friend from a long time ago. We've been friends since grade two, Sam. Yep. And I call her Sam. So, Sam I guess I better just let her tell her own story. So, thank you, Sam, for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Patty.
Yeah. So I guess we can start with the basics of what happened. How did you find out that your dad was in a coma, and how long was he in a coma for?
Okay. So basically like this happened third year high school. So maybe like now, speaking terms and of now, it's like grade 11. My dad woke up like in the middle of the night and he was vomiting blood. So he asked my mom to take his BP. So growing up, that's something that my dad has always been hypertensive. So I've learned to take his high blood pressure first thing in the morning and first thing at night. So I guess for context, and my dad's BP is normally 140 over 80. That's pretty high. That's pretty elevated. I'd say the normal is like 100 over 80 to like 120 over 80, something like that. But that night when my dad woke up, he asked my mom. He also woke up my mom to take his BP, and it was like 200 over 80. And so my mom woke me up and was like, I think, am I reading it wrong? Like, can you just take it? And it was even higher when I took it. It was like 220 over 100. So and my dad was vomiting blood. So clearly my mom said, okay, let's just bring your dad to the hospital.
Mhm.
So when we got to the hospital, the doctors actually told us that my dad suffered a stroke, and they had a MRI done, and they saw that there's a massive bleed. So they were saying that they need to operate on my dad, but usually for those kind of cases they don't anymore because he's as good as gone. And so we were so young then, me and my sisters, we were still in Ika, we were still in high school. Shaba was still in grade school. And so my mom said, like, I need to take that chance. My kids are so young. And so my mom, I guess we were also very lucky because my dad's doctors have been his doctors for so long. So I
Mhm.
think they empathize with us a little bit more. Because I guess if it was just looking at statistics, right? The statistics weren't on our side.
Yeah.
And in fact, before the surgery happened, they were saying, oh, we should say our goodbyes to our dad and things like that. So I went back home to bring my two little sisters back then to the hospital to say our goodbyes to dad. I guess timeline wise, a clear memory that I'll never forget is my little sister. She was shaking my dad's bed and she was saying like, "Dad, we're still gonna watch Prisoner of Azkaban in the cinema." So that was how long ago it was, and so my dad was able to get the surgery because again his doctors have been his doctors for so long. The other doctors actually didn't want to operate on my dad anymore, so we were really lucky, and even luckier that my dad survived the surgery. So they were telling us that when they opened my dad's skull, it was full of blood and it was actually like not even pink anymore. Um so there was no more oxygen in his brain. But as they were taking out the blood, it started to regain its natural color. And so they said because my dad was a bit old already, it might take longer for him to heal. And so he was in a coma for a long time. He was in a coma for like 10 to 12 years, I think. So it's been 2012 was when, sorry, 2011 was when he was in a coma, December. And sadly, he passed away almost 2 years ago, 2021 November, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So that was so sudden. Like everything happened
Yeah.
right away, and even if he had that history of being hypertensive to the point wherein you already knew how to take his blood pressure and you were, very responsible from a young age. I'm sure it was still very, shocking, surprising, unexpected.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then after that moment, and your mom had to make that, split second decision, like, my kids are young, I need to try and give it a chance. I mean, that whole experience, how was that for you and, beyond? Because you mentioned, another 10, 12 years of having your dad there, but not really there.
Yeah, I think for us, it was a complete lifestyle change. We all had to, of course, drop everything to take care of my dad. I was in college then, so I took up pre-med, right? With that kind of background, I guess it motivated me even more. Um, I was I guess we were all really lucky because actually looking back at it now and me and my mom talk about it, she's like she doesn't even know how she got through it. Like even just like not just mentally but also like financially because it was a lot. It cost so much. My dad initially was in the hospital for 3 months in the ICU. And so all of us really had to learn, I guess all of us had to learn how to get around or like to get by, if that makes sense. And I think for me, we were really lucky that we grew up very religious.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I had nothing else. Like me and my family, we had nothing else but God because we couldn't control anything, right? We couldn't control if the surgery was gonna do well, if the doctors were even gonna take care of my dad because to them, like my dad was as good as dead.
Hmm.
Um, and so we were there. I remember we totally adjusted our lives for for those 3 months. We stayed. I don't even know actually how I graduated. Like looking back, I don't know how I survived school. I just remember that every day after school we would go straight to St. Luke's, and that was our life. The first week that my dad was in the hospital, my mom also got a room in the hospital.
Yeah.
So we lived there actually. And so my mom completely transformed my dad's ICU room into like a spa to make it feel very homey, like all the essential oils and all those things. And I think we got by also with a lot of support. My
Yeah.
dad was a my dad was a parent rep in ICA. So it was pretty funny because the nurses were saying like my dad had more visitors than FPJ in the hospital because of course like it was so near school. So when they would fetch their kids or whatever, they would pass by and they just like make chica with my dad. So I think there's also a lot of that, right? A lot of support, and I'm sure my dad felt it too. If you go to his room before, my sister's batch, they made like a quilt of like post-its, like go Uncle Sammy, you can do it, and things like that, and it was posted in his wall. So I think it's also like it also encourages, I guess, the doctors that there's a lot of people rooting for this guy. Like he better like pull through.
Yeah.
And we had like the Tilma of Mama Mary and all these things, and we were really introduced to so many devotions. I guess like my mom personally had a really strong devotion to Mama Mary, and I think us growing up being exposed to Mama Mary too help honestly. Personally, I guess I can only speak for myself. It really helped me. I remember during my dad's surgery, I was like bribing God in the chapel. I was like, God, I only have 500 pesos in my wallet, but I'm gonna
Give
give
it
it all.
all.
Yeah, I'll give it all to you, but make sure my dad gets out of surgery. Like I really just didn't know better. I remember one of the things our teacher told us was honestly sometimes when you have nothing else, like all you can do is pray the rosary, and that's all I did.
Yeah.
Um and I
Yeah.
think that's really, honestly, for me, that's really how I got by. Like I would go to my college friends know this because I would go to mass like every Wednesday and Friday. Wednesday because it's our mother perpetual help, and Friday because it's Sacred Heart. So like all the novenas, like everything just asking for strength because there's nothing really else you could do but hope and do your best. It also got us into like researching a lot. I don't know if you guys are into Grey's Anatomy, but my parents are super into Grey's Anatomy. So when we would watch something like there would be coma patients from time to time, and we would always ask our doctors like, "Is this something we can do for dad?" Like, and all those researches that are like, I guess it's not really even based on science anymore. So one of the things they say is like the hearing is the last sense to go.
Yeah.
So we would play
Talk
my
to him.
dad's favorite
Mhm.
music. We'd always talk to him, and through time, actually, my you could see my dad improve because he would have facial expressions already, but he was still comatose. So there's, I guess, a measurement of how much comatose you are, right? My dad was
Yeah.
pretty much still on that end, but then when we would see my dad's neuro, she would be with us because she's been with us through the whole journey,
Mhm.
actually until the end. And she said, Sam, even her secretaries, when they found out my dad passed, they were like, your dad was improving so much. It's just in the end it was his kidneys that gave way because of
Yeah.
all the medications that he's been taking for like the past 10 years. His kidneys couldn't handle it anymore. Um,
Right.
but my dad was very responsive, like the music that he liked, or my dad was very specific on watching news. So at 6 p.m. we have to like play the news on TV, or else his face would change expression, or he would
Mhm.
cough a lot.
Yeah.
So there are different ways of communicating, I guess, and it made us be very like open-minded, and really anything that we heard, like,
Yeah.
oh, this is good for comatose patients, we tried it out. I think that was one thing we could say, like, looking back, no regrets, because we did really
Everything. Yes.
everything we could.
Yeah. And like so amazing watching or yeah, kind of seeing you guys as a family. And as you said, it was a complete lifestyle change at the drop of a hat. Like everything had to drop and stop and change. And in order to have that resilience, not only as an individual but collectively as an entire family, that is something so rare and so precious. And as he said, it's because a lot of you have been grounded by your spiritual beliefs or your faith. But then, because it can always go the other way, where a lot of families are kind of ripped apart after facing tragedy or facing, a life changing experience. And so, being able to manage everything that you've done for the past how many years, making decisions, caring, and kind of just keeping everyone close together as a family is amazing. So, thank you so much for sharing that part of your life with us. And I'm curious also to kind of know about other, I guess, bigger challenges, or what is the biggest challenge that you faced while you cared for him, um, when he was in his state.
I think for us it was like remaining hopeful because it was a long time. But I guess we just learned how to live with it, if that makes sense. Like, honestly, for me, I see work from home as a big blessing, because during the lockdown, like, I was with my dad every day. I would take my meetings in his room and things like that. So I think in that sense, I was really able to care for him 200% during that time. And it really pushed me, and it really showed me that if you have the willpower to do it, you can. And I guess it's also at that point we had to stop everything for my dad. So I guess now I would say, like, I'm learning to live my life for myself,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. And so um one of the things that I'm really thankful for is my mom got into yoga. And so that also influenced me and my sisters to get into yoga. And honestly, at first it was just like for the exercise, right?
Yeah.
But actually one of the things that I actually miss about yoga is it also strengthens your spirituality and your mind.
Mhm.
For my sister would always recommend my mom before to learn how to meditate, to like calm her mind and like clear her mind. And she'd never believe us. She would say, like, oh, that's really not for me. I think it's a bit boring. Right. And when she got into yoga, it's part of it. And so she would even invite me and my sisters, like, oh, there's a meditation class before the yoga class. Do you want to join? And then we were like, okay, that's so strange. Like, for mom to be so into it. And I guess shout out to teacher Neil, because he was really the one who forced my mom to get into it. And even during the pandemic, we would do it together as a family. We would meditate together as a family. And I think that really helps. That really helped us. And even until now, one of the things that I practice the moment I wake up is like box breathing.
Mhm.
I don't I don't know if it's counted as meditation, pero I think for me, medyo, it's kind of
Yeah.
the same. I do it for like five
I-
minutes in the morning and at night before I go to sleep. It just clears my mind. It makes me feel at ease. And so I learned actually about box breathing in one of my seminars for leadership
Yeah.
that good to do before like you have a speech or if you're so anxious for an event. So it's really helped me, and it's actually one of the pro tips that I would share to anyone who's like, how did you get through everything in life? And I think that's one of like reconnecting with your breath. I think is so important and it's so underrated. Um
Yeah.
yeah.
So absolutely, like your plight kind of resonates with so many people that how do I keep on going? How do I, or where do I find that hope? How can I live with this? And how long for do I still have to keep going? Because especially with chronic illness and a lot of clients that come my way, that's a big question. There's burnout, there's stress, there's I want to live my life, but also I love this person, so I'm willing to like drop everything for this person. But, you know, when is enough? And kind of that big question of how long, or do I have strength left? Where do I get that strength? And so, kind of you mentioning earlier, having the right resources, like your box breathing, your doctors who are so supportive, your friends, your family who come and visit and who lend an extra hand, plus your faith and something to believe in. All of these things kind of are together in one toolbox to kind of give you that hope and to give you that strength every day to be like, okay, it's another day. I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe it's more of the same. Maybe it's something else, but I need to wake up. I need to do things. I need to get through the day. And then you reach a point where you're like, okay, I'm functioning, I'm moving. And then now it's kind of like you go into the whole self care part, and it's okay, how do I fit in into everything else that's going on? Because my whole life now is revolving around, taking care of my dad, who I love so much, but at the same time, it's consuming me inside. Um, so, what advice would you give to somebody who is trying to manage everything and feels like everything is on their shoulders and that all the burden and responsibilities with them, and that if they don't do it all, everything's going to fall apart?
Yeah. I guess it's really tough. For me, what really kept me going is going to church, going to mass. So
Mhm,
I really believe that God speaks to me in like the readings. So my favorite reading is actually of the paralyzed man
mhm,
who like really didn't it was really his friends who carried him to Jesus, to the roof and things like that. So I guess my number one advice would be is you are not alone, no matter how much you feel that you are. It's hard to reach out to people and it's hard to like of course it's hard for people to empathize with where you are, but I think it's really important to know that you are not alone. Like just that and reaching out to people, even if it's like honestly, like for us, my mom's main lifeline or even us would be the priests in the church and even the seminarian. So I guess just finding that community that would help you and support you, I think is really important. And don't get frustrated. They'll come. I swear they'll come. Like it's amazing how like people just show up and connect with you and understand what you're going through. So I guess it's like something not to be really so frustrated about. And I guess it's also aside from looking at the big picture, like for us, it was like for dad to wake up. That was like the big picture. That was the main objective, right? But it's also like breaking those down into like what are the small wins? Like you have to take in the small wins. So for example, for me, when my dad started opening his eyes, we were like, whoa, this is like a big a big thing. We took that win and we did everything to make that win bigger, if that makes sense. So like when my dad's eyes started to open, so we were wondering if his sense of sight, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, was back, right? Because in his during his coma, his brain, it was his optical nerves that were damaged.
Mhm.
So they were saying maybe my dad was blind and things like that. So we would research, me and my family would research like what tests could we do, because my dad couldn't talk. So what tests could we do to try or to help him improve in those kind of things. So um one doctor said you should get that disco ball, the one with lights.
Yeah.
So and to see if like my dad's eyes would follow it. And to make just to exercise it and things like that. So I think I think don't be so frustrated, right? Like honestly looking back, I really have no idea how we managed, how my mom managed, but um it just it comes. It comes. So it's just like I think the main advice would be take it day by day and have a main objective, right? And break those down into small wins. And you know, just small things, honestly, for me, that's really what helped. Like the small wins is what give you comfort and what give you joy.
Yeah, I'm loving it. There's so much nuggets of wisdom that, you're just spewing out. So finding like-minded people, your community, and don't be frustrated if it doesn't come right away, because there's so many people in the world. So eventually you're going to find that community that understands you and can empathize with you to a certain extent. And having those people along with you on the journey and feeling less alone makes it just so much more lighter and easier. And I love when you were mentioning about having that big picture and not micro, or having that myopic, narrow minded view of, oh my God, today was like this, he did that, or he couldn't do this, or he couldn't do that. But rather, having that big, okay, along the way, we might have some setbacks, we might stumble upon challenges and obstacles, but as long as we get to the goal, that's fine. And then, kind of to keep you going, what are the smaller wins to keep you um, having that positive feedback loop and having that motivation to, oh, okay, yesterday we had a small win. Let's keep moving forward. And I like that you mentioned that these have to be realistic. You're not hoping that, okay, if we help train his eyes, he's just magically gonna wake up. No, it's like, okay, let's try this, see how it goes. And then if it has a small improvement, let's celebrate that. Let's take that time, that moment to appreciate this blessing. And then let's look for something else after. So I think that's what's lacking a lot um, in people. It's that ability to recognize that there are good things happening in the midst of all the chaos and the frustration and the overwhelm. And I don't blame anybody, because, we're human and we don't have that capacity to be perfect. Like, it's just nobody's perfect. And so, on one hand, it's like it's so difficult to kind of say, I want him to get better, and so I'm doing all of this, and I'm not seeing any results, and getting frustrated, as you said. We have to take a breather from time to time, or we're gonna go crazy. And so, really celebrating the wins, and even just grieving together for the losses, that really helps a lot. Um, Great. And so I'm sure, at the beginning, kind of, since this happened all so suddenly, you were lost, right? At the start, you didn't know what to do, didn't know what was going on, especially since you were so young. I mean, you were the oldest among the siblings, but you were still a kid. You haven't even graduated high school. It's kind of, how did you handle that learning curve? How did you know where to start? And how do you know that you were doing the right, how did you know that you were doing the right thing, I guess?
Honestly, I don't think I ever realized that I was doing the right thing. Like back then, right? The only the only thing on everyone's mind, on our whole family's mind, is like how to support dad,
Mhm.
right? That was like the only thing on our mind. So I don't think I can't remember a moment where I was like am I okay? Like, hey, are you okay? Like, I don't think I ever checked in. And I guess, like, if ever, that would have been something that I would change. It's hard. I'm sure it's hard. It's easier said than done to like make time for yourself in the midst of the chaos. But towards the end, like I said, we discovered yoga. We discovered like how to take care of ourselves, even if it was just like that 1 hour of class in a day. And I guess it's just also having those quiet moments to yourself. Like for me now, it's like having my cup of coffee with my dogs. Like that's like peace. That's like peace for me at the start of the day. So I
Yeah.
guess it's finding those kind of moments. And I guess it's also very underrated. Like people don't really appreciate. For me, it's really appreciating the small things. And I learned somewhere recently, I would have a journal or like the Starbucks planner, and I would write like 3 things in a day that I'm grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was started, I think I shared this with you before, Pat, na before, I was so frustrated. Like, parang, there aren't really big things happening every day. And then I realized, like, it's exactly that. It's like, oh, my coffee, I had a great cup of coffee this morning. Like, check. That's a win. Like, another one was like, I talked to Patty today. I had this conversation. It's like those things that you take for granted. I guess for me, you have to take a step back and learn to appreciate it because it doesn't happen actually every day. Like sadly, every day you don't get a consistent cup of coffee. Sadly, every day you don't get to have good conversations with your friends anymore.
Yeah.
But it's very like it's something that parang you don't appreciate it kasi you're like, oh, it's a given. Like you expect it to happen. Um and honestly, I think it's having the proper mindset. Recently on TikTok, I don't know if everyone watches TikTok, but on TikTok, there's this thing that went viral. It's called the lucky girl syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about mindset, to be honest, because like for so long, as I was grieving my dad, I was so negative. I was like, oh, and I guess it's part of the grieving process, right? Like parang life sucks. Like there's nothing I was at the point that life sucks, there's nothing to live for. Like what the hell, right? Like we gave our all and we still got nothing.
Yeah.
Right. You could be in that mindset and it was so dark. I was such in a dark place. And then I suddenly found this video on TikTok na lucky girl syndrome. And I was like, okay, I guess it works or something like that. So there's like affirmations that you say to yourself in the morning. And it actually made such a big difference that it really shifted like my I wanted to go out with my friends more. Like I guess I was so lucky because like our group, Patty, was so they were so caring of me. I might cry. But
It's okay.
like the check-ins were such a big deal.
Yeah.
And it's like, how are you? Stuff like that. Something that's like so parang like how you start your conversation. Hi, how are you? And sometimes like you just say, okay, I'm good. How about you? But I wasn't okay. And I would like say like, oh guys, have to beg off. Like I'm not in the mood to see people because I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Oh years. And so only recently really have I shifted my mindset na, there's so much more in life to live. And actually I should take this time for myself. Like for how many years I didn't have that time for me. And I didn't even realize actually that I didn't have time for myself. My tears. So I was like, so I honestly, it's really a change of mindset. And I think that's the most important is to have like a strong mental health. Strong, healthy, I don't know what the right term is, but it's as long as you have that. And it's really honestly, so I swear, take it from me, it's really hard to be positive all the time. And I guess I've been through like that whole roller coaster of emotions because growing up I was such a happy kid, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. And
Yeah.
so and then when that happens to you, you're just like, yo, life sucks, what the hell? And then it gets even worse. Doesn't make sense. Like you think like and at one point in my life I was thinking like life can't get any worse than
Anyways.
this.
Yeah.
Right. And when I had that mindset, bad things kept happening over and over again. And I was like, ano ba yan? God, ano na? Like, what the hell? Like and then I realized like actually I was also at fault because I was like challenging God or the universe na parang 'di ba I was like life sucks so parang yun talaga, that's what I got. Does it make sense? Like, I got like a shitty life, if that makes sense. Like, I got shitty, sorry for cursing, but I got like bad situations. But now that you're like always like in a positive mindset, and again, it's easier said than done. But once I practice that, like in the morning, I have like a good like manifestation, like today's gonna be a good day. Like I can feel it. And you embody that. Like you embody that. And it's such a different you honestly, you have such a different you experience such a different day, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Like, and it's also, I guess, going back to like taking small wins. Like for me, yay, I'm like 5 minutes early to class. Like I'm happy, or like I'm able to work out today. I'm happy. It's those small things, and it's like I'm able to reach my 10,000 step goal. Things like that, and are like having vegetables in my meal, which I force myself to have now. So it's those kind of things really that get you by. And again, I guess I just want to say that, of take it from me, who's like had it really bad. My dad, just to like paint the horrible picture, right? My dad passed away, and then afterwards our dog passed away, and then I got really bad COVID. I was hospitalized for COVID, even having all the vaccines and things like that. And I was like, God, what the hell? Like even like at one point I was like, my family was so mad because I was really in a dark place, and I was like, honestly, if I go, it's okay. Like if I pass away today, it's fine. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess it's also shifting. I think also because there was also like a time that my mindset, I guess growing up, we were so scared of death. And so I guess like at that point, medyo exage naman ako. Like I was embracing na death. Na parang okay lang if mamatay ako today. And that really scared my family. And I guess I'm sorry if they watched. And so it's finding that balance, because you will have to go, if that makes sense, you have to go to the extreme of like hating life, and then to super exage loving life, and then bad stuff happens to you and it challenges you, and you're like, okay, it's like pulling you from side to side, if that makes sense. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's for me what's important, and you have to invest and take the time in building a foundation, like a really solid foundation, because even people with really good foundations nagka-crumble siya when you're challenged so much. But it's a practice. Every day you have to build that, and the more like one day, it's also discipline, diba? Because like if one day you're just like lazy not to do it, voila, it's gonna be easier to break.
Precisely. So the consistency needs to be there. It's, the discipline of, and discipline normally comes with like negative connotations, like, oh, discipline is hard work, it's boring. It's, yes, it's all of that, but also in a sense, it's like you need to be disciplined enough to train your brain to think that, okay, let's look for the good today, or disciplined enough to say, okay, today I really feel bad, let's feel bad just for today, and tomorrow let's find something good. But like, have a deadline, have a timeline. You have to feel your feelings. You can't just shove all of that sadness into a
Yeah, for
box
sure.
and like, you're also going to explode. It's that discipline of being mindful, being aware of everything that's going on inside you, and kind of figuring out, okay, where do I go from here? What do I do with all of this information? How do I process it? And yeah, there was so much said, but I love that when you said, that question when people ask you, hi, how are you? It's such a complicated question, because when I get asked, how are you? There's always two choices. As you said, it's like, yeah, I'm good, I'm fine. Standard answer, we move on to another topic. And the second one is, okay, if I choose to share with you what's actually going on inside, it's like Pandora's box. Everything's gonna vomit
Exactly,
out. And
exactly.
it's like, I don't want to put this burden on you. Um, but then, yeah, eventually, kind of you learn that there are ways to ask for help without overwhelming the other person or putting all the blame on the other person. And you learn to trust as well that, true friends make that space for you. And they have that boundary to say, okay, enough for today. Like, this is all I can handle.
Yeah,
Um, but when you need something else, maybe tomorrow. Yeah. So
yeah,
it's an option. Like, it's not necessarily. because a lot of people have guilt. If I ask for help, I'm guilty because I'm not doing it, or if I take a vacation, if I take a break, if I have those quiet, peaceful moments to myself, there's a lot of guilt, like, oh my God, I'm not helping dad, or oh my God, I'm not thinking of that. If I go out with my friends, I'm having fun while dad's, sick or he's in a coma. And so, yeah, that guilt is there. But an analogy, a very cliched analogy that we always like to share is it's like riding a plane. When something happens, oxygen masks fall out. What do they tell you? Wear your own mask first before you put on anybody else's mask. Because only if you have that good foundation, that solid base, that you can truly help another person at your maximum capacity, at your best. And that's kind of, for me, one of the definitions of love, I guess, being able to nurture someone in that way at your maximum, at your best, and having that emotional space to be able to truly accept them as they are, like not as the ideal person that we want them to be. So, for example, I'm sure, we all have that father daughter relationship that is so different, that is so good. And we're very lucky to have that because not everybody has that. But kind of having that, dad's my Superman, dad's my superhero, he's the
Yeah.
protector. And suddenly having that, pillar taken away from you, it's very frustrating. And not having that there, I guess, in the future to walk you down the aisle when you get married, or to do things that,
Yeah.
we wanted so much as children. It's life gets in the way, right? I don't know what
Yeah.
else to say.
And I think it's like as we get older too, it's like you realize that you aren't alone, if that makes sense. Like before, it's like dad's sick, and I'm like, I'm so young, and I felt like no one could really understand what I was going through. And then now that we're a bit older, and it's like dad passed away, and I realized like, wait, I also have some friends who don't have their dads anymore. And it's like I guess it shows like exactly what I was saying, right? Like you think you're alone, but actually you aren't. Somebody will always, they don't have the exact same story as you because no one does, but somebody will always be able to empathize with you. And really, I guess it just comes, really. It really just comes. It's really for you to realize and like really reach out to those kind of people because they know what you're going through. And I guess it's, you also have that like silent bond, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like no one can ever walk in the same shoes as you, but somebody can definitely walk beside you. So
Yeah.
I love that so much. And that's exactly why I'm so grateful that you decided to come on and share your story today. Because if, even if we get, just one person who will feel better after listening to this, that already means so much. Yeah, we have like a few more questions. Bear with me.
Yeah.
So we've been talking so much about the struggles, the frustrations, the sacrifices that had to be made in this journey of yours. Can you share with us something very positive, or one, wonderful thing that came out of all of this?
I think it showed me my potential, if that makes sense. Like it showed me um that I could really do a cliche, but it showed me that if I want to do something, you give it your all, you can really do it. And I guess it shows you how people are really built differently, if that makes sense. And we're so lucky we're raised by exactly what you said, Patty. Like we were raised by superhumans. And so we're trained in a different way. And um I'm thankful for that. And I didn't like now there I handled the situation. I think also because now I've handled the worst, right? So anytime I have a problem, how I handle it is all out, if that makes sense, because I don't know how else. right?
Yeah.
I don't know how else. Because before it was my dad's life on the line, right? So of course I would give it my like 200, 300%. So, and that's my main realization. So sometimes it kind of like crosses too much, right? So with my sisters, um my sisters actually call me Mochi. So it's mom plus Achi,
I
because
see.
growing up I was stricter um to them than my mom was to them.
Mm.
So I was like, because like growing up in my head, mom and dad were so strict on me, right? And so because, of our situation, like there are things like, yeah, more lax. And I was like, no, that's like, that isn't how it's done, if that makes sense. So I think like for me, the situation or like what I've been through has shown me that we are a different breed. Not to be my abang or what ha, but parang it unlocks different it unlocks your potential to really think outside the box. For example, like when COVID happened, I was like insane. Sorry. I was like, I had to make sure that my house was a bubble.
Mhm.
Like we were really the extremes, like, and I wouldn't have changed it any other way, if that makes sense. Like I am proud to say that my dad never got COVID. I got him the vaccines, even if he was bedridden. I like I don't know how to say it in English, pero gumawa ng paraan.
Yeah.
Like
On the way.
yeah, like if there's
Resourcefulness.
yeah, resourcefulness. Like if there's a will, there's a way talaga.
Yeah.
I guess that's like my main thing. Like if you want to do something, you can. Like you really can't say na, you can't make all the excuses eh. You can do it. Swear. You just need to like really put in the effort. I think that's really what I learned through the experience of
Yeah.
it all.
Yeah. And it really shows, from how I see you as a friend and from how other people around you see you, so reliable, so dependable, and just your level of responsibility is it's just built in. It's like you're a robot.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like it's really like parang for me, that's why I guess sometimes I get frustrated na parang why can't they why can't they do why can't if
Why
you
can't
want to do
they be
it, just
me?
do it. For me, like if you sometimes I get frustrated then when people tell me like, I really someone is sick like that. And I'm like, in my head, based on experience, kinaya ko eh. So kayanan mo din. Does it make sense? Like sometimes it's a bit too harsh. Like I know na it's a bit too harsh. And sometimes exactly what you said, Patty, like I acknowledge that I can be a robot because for so long I had to shut off the feelings
Mhm.
portion. Like before, you just have to do it. Like just
Absolutely.
do it.
Yeah.
Diba? Like there's no time to feel bad or to feel sorry for yourself and to even feel guilt. I guess like all of that sadly had to come crashing through to me when I lost my dad. So all of that guilt, like looking back, I was like, I couldn't process it really. Like what was I feeling through all of that, through that journey? I like feelings didn't exist to me. And I guess like um maybe that was my coping mechanism, right? Of course, I don't encourage anyone to turn off your feelings, right? If you
We love
watch,
feelings.
yeah,
Everyone, we love feelings.
recently I watched J-Lo's new movie on Netflix. Have you seen that,
No,
Patty? And
I haven't.
she also turned off her feelings because she needed to,
Yeah.
right? And she needed to, and that film. So basically, watch that film. It's nice. It shows also like you have to do what you got to do to survive, and that is not that's not like that's not a template for everyone, if that makes sense. Like everyone goes through it differently, and sadly that's how I got through it. I didn't have feelings. But now I'm so hyper aware, if that makes sense. Like it's like I said kanina, it's all about balance kasi. So for me, I go through the extremes. Either like I shut off feelings. Now naman I feel so much feelings. And it's for me finding that balance. It's honestly life is really about finding the balance. And that's really the journey. And you just have to be willing to find it.
Yeah. So, yeah, as you said, everybody works in different ways, everybody operates differently, and not one way is better or more correct than the other. It's just you have to find really what works for you. that you're willing to, put your foot down for defend. You have to know your core values, basically, I guess,
Yes.
is what we're all trying to say. um, and be firm about them, and don't give in when at the end of the day you're not going to feel any guilt because you believe in what you're doing. um, and I remember I saw this, I don't use TikTok but Instagram reels, and there was a person saying, I prayed to God for strength. He doesn't give you strength, but he gives you the opportunity to be strong.
Strong.
And so I guess what happened. That's what happened in your case. And so I was joking around with somebody earlier, and I was like, okay, I better stop praying for strength and just pray for something easy. I don't want any more
True.
challenges to come my way.
Actually, I think one of the quotes that I really loved is it's in my Facebook bio. It's something about like God gives his strongest soldiers like his hardest battles. So okay, at this point, God, okay lang. I don't want to be a soldier anymore. I just want to vibe it out. Have a good life. Yeah. God gives here. I'll open my Facebook. God gives his hardest battles to his strongest soldiers. I'm a good. Parang retired general na ako. I
You
don't
already
want.
have your medal of honor.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
enough.
good. I'm good. But
Nah,
yeah.
so kidding aside, and we're old friends, everyone. So we're just joking around. Um, but yeah, it's really great, great stories and experiences that we've heard from Sam on how she was able to kind of get through this tough journey and supporting her dad, and now more on the self love, supporting herself and having that time for herself instead. So we learned so much from finding the right resources, having like-minded people around you, having that bigger objective, that vision to cling onto, and celebrating your smaller wins along the way, and having that empathy, that compassion for people around you, but also for yourself. And just remembering that you're not alone. There are so many people going through different things that they may or may not show you necessarily, but just trust or have that faith that things will work out somehow, that it will end one day, because life, there's nothing consistent in life except that things always change. So, whatever your situation is now, it's going to change somehow. So, keep that in mind, and I hope everybody loved watching this interview. So thank you so much, Sam, for being here today, and we should see each other again soon.
Thanks, Patty, for having me.
Yes, I love this so much. Bye.
Bye.